We're joined by Ryan Newman, driver of the number 31 Kalahari Resort Chevrolet for Richard Childress Racing. Ryan, a former winner at this track. Would you please just walk us through, Ryan, what it takes to really get around the tricky triangle?
Just obviously having a good balance in all three corners, and probably one of the biggest keys is no matter how good you get through those corners, you have to have the power to pull it down the straightaway. And it seems like at some point, some pit strategy, some fuel savings, and a little bit of luck has to come your way. But nevertheless, I've always enjoyed this racetrack. I enjoy the area, and especially now with Kalahari being built just up the street, it's a great place for kids and families to go and have some fun when the racetrack's not hot.
Okay, we'll open the floor up for questions. If you have a question for Ryan, please raise your hand. We'll get a wireless mic too. We'll start with Zach, and then we'll go to John.
Zach Sterniola with the Pocono record. You kind of touched on it just there that there's always fuel strategy involved here at Pocono. With the stage racing now and the way that these stages fall, how do you feel like that's going to affect the kind of how this race plays out?
It will, and I don't know how much, and I don't know when, if it'll be the first stage, the second stage, the third stage, or all three. But, I think that, the bigger the racetrack, the more risk you are for not making it back to pit road. And we have this stretch in the summer between the two Poconos, Indianapolis, Watkins Glen, and Sonoma, where we got big racetracks, lots of distance, and fuel mileage is talked about it quite a bit. And with the stages, I think that changes. I think it changes because of the the size of the racetrack, how good your race car is, and the strategy that goes along with it. You put 4 tires on, and when you do it, you take a risk of doing it a little bit early, expecting a caution, or does the caution not come and you put yourself in a bad spot? So I think it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I mean, the pros and the cons of stages is, we get those guaranteed restarts, guaranteed bunch-ups, and therefore guaranteed yellows, which I don't particularly care for. But I do like stage racing, and I do like the way that it mixes up the strategy. Just never like to see a race go yellow.
Go next to John.
John Harville with ESPN Albuquerque. Ryan, how would you evaluate the first half of the regular season of the schedule?
For me personally?
Yeah.
Obviously Phoenix was huge for us to get that first win. We've had some decent runs, some top 5s and top 10s. Of late, we've had 2 top 10s that, to me, our performance did not meet that result. So we've got to pick it up. It's good to have good finishes, but I would actually feel better if we had a car that led more laps and finished 4th than a car that ran 15th to 17th all day and finished 4th. So I think there's a balance in there, and we have to keep working.
And how is your team, plus the other 2 RCR teams with Austin Dillon has the win also, how are you guys approaching the final 13 races of the regular season entering the playoffs?
Well, I know how we are, and that's to do everything to the best of our ability and try to get those stage bonus points, get the regular season points that we can, and have whatever cushion we can have to start the playoffs and in each round of the playoffs, so that we have a better opportunity of racing for a championship in Homestead. That's ultimately what it's all about, but it still revolves around winning.
Additional questions for Ryan? We'll go to Holly here and then to Robbie.
Ryan, how much different is this going on and getting that win early in the season and knowing you're going to be in the playoffs versus, when you got in on points and things like that? How does this change your team's strategy for the season?
Let me put it to you this way. I don't remember the last time I had a win and didn't have to worry about getting in on points. And again, there's still no guarantees. I don't see us having 17 winners in 26 races. It could happen, but I don't see it. And I think that it is nice to have that off of your mind, but I still feel that you have to have the mentality that you don't. You have to have the stubbornness and the racing mentality of you can't just say that we're in. I've seen guys the last few years that get that, and they don't perform well in the first or second stage of the playoffs, and it costs them. So I think when you race for points, no matter if you win or you don't, it is good practice for becoming or being closer to becoming a champion.
We'll go to Robbie, then to Jerry.
Robbie Mays, MRN. Ryan, after we leave Pocono next week, we go to Michigan, wide open, 2-mile, fast racetrack. Your thoughts heading to Michigan? I know you have had success there in the past. What are your thoughts heading there next week?
Well, it was always a fun racetrack. It's been a bit of a challenge with the groove being a lot narrower and somewhat treacherous when you get out of that groove. So I hope that some of the homework that we've done, whether it's with VHT or Tire Dragons or just the age of the racetrack, is going to make it for better racing, because it is a lot of fun when you can get 3 and 4 and 5 wide in the corners and get your car with some clean air on the nose to be able to make a pass. And we haven't had that in a few years since it's been repaved. And I think that if we can get back to that, then it'll be the Michigan that we all enjoyed, instead of just some of us enjoying it.
Jerry Jordan, former Racing Network, and Kicking the Tires. When Austin won his race, Richard and he were talking about, and the assets, the things that he has put towards the team, everything you guys asked for, he tries to go out there and get. But he said that sometimes it's still y'all are almost like an underdog. Do you feel that you guys are a small team that is trying to overcome? But with two of you guys having a win, trying to get Paul in there as well. How do you feel the team is advancing and turning things around?
It's somewhat of a loaded question, because I think if you look at us from a sponsorship standpoint, we probably are an unpublished underdog. But at the same time, I don't know that entirely matters when it comes to the race cars and the racetrack. Richard does a good job of giving us every tool that we need. It's not like we're missing any wrenches in the toolbox, or when it comes to simulation, wind tunnel time, 7-post time, we have that. I mean, we have more tools probably than we have time to work on them, and we have a lot of people. But I think it all matters it's all a matter of how you put everything together and use all your tools. It's like a toolbox, right? I mean, you don't use a hammer when you need to screw something in. You don't use a screwdriver when you need to chisel something out. You get the right tools for the right places at the right time, and that's the biggest challenge I think that most teams have now. If you look at the rules package, the tolerances that we have to meet, everybody's pretty much building the same race car. It's the finite details that are really making the big difference. The biggest one of those being under the hood, the rest of it being the aero side of it. So, I don't think that we're exactly where we want to be at this point in the season, but I do feel that we're in a good position, having two of our 3 cars, into the playoffs or potentially into the playoffs, however you want to say it, and having a better year for sure than we did last year.
Also, you're an engineer. The rule change actually went into effect this week underneath behind the radiator fan. Can you talk about that? Does that affect you notice any of that?
As long as it's the same for everybody, it doesn't matter. I mean, I know that the rule change did occur, but in the end, I don't think it's a big deal. I wish we didn't have to sit up here and talk about silly things like those types of rule changes halfway through the season, but it is what it is. And you wouldn't get into those boxes if NASCAR didn't let you. It's not their fault. It's just, sometimes you got to clean up what everybody's doing. And, I wish we could talk about the racing versus that.
We'll go to Lee.
To kind of follow up on that, would you prefer that the changes are just made at the start of the season? I mean, you guys usually get the rules package at the end of summer and then have, the off season to work on it. Would you prefer just to have it stay like that, or do you think that NASCAR kind of owes it to the garage to keep parity in there, and if they see something, they're going to make the rule across the board for everybody?
This wasn't a change in parity. This was a change.
You know what I'm saying. I mean, this week...
I know what you're saying, but in the end, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, we're talking about a rules change that has something to do with everybody. And, if you're gonna check a box off that we can't work in anymore, then what's the point, right? I mean, we need the ability to make an advantage or create an advantage over other teams. So, if we want to have every race car built exactly the same, then we need to have NASCAR start building them for us and just put decals on the doors.
But in addition to that, there were a lot of fans talking about change this week, and rather than talking about Jimmy's accomplishment or how well.
That's my point. I'd rather
Right.
us talk about what Jimmy did, or the crash in the last lap, or the oil dry on the racetrack. I mean, there's a lot of things to be talking about other than a rule change in the middle of the season. It's just silliness.
So should you think that if once you have the 2018 rule book, that should be kind of set in stone, and then
There are things I think that revolve around safety that are more important than rules that have an arrow effect and how it affects maybe one manufacturer over another or one team over another. I think that that's, again, silliness. Safety is at the first, and the rules should change for that. Whether it's a lug nut rule, we should be talking more about lug nuts and what we can do to secure a wheel on a hub so that the wheel doesn't fall off, whether it has any lug nuts on it or not. That makes more sense to talk about to me than an arrow modification.
Additional questions for Ryan?
So if you guys want to type something up, I can just do a few things for you, and just as long as you give me credit at the bottom of the paragraph.
My personal engineer said this. What about the speedy draw on the track last week?
It was more there. There was more there than I thought there was, and I think it was a matter of we all couldn't see it. I mean, white on white is still white, and it just you couldn't see it. And then when the 48 blew it up, the 42 blew it up 78, and then Ty hit it, and I was underneath Ty, and it was crazy. I mean, I think there was way more there than we ever realized.
Okay. Well, Ryan, thanks for taking the time to join us
Thank
today.
you.
Good luck this weekend.